When the world watched the smoke rise from New York on September 11, 2001, few outside Afghanistan knew that a brutal war had already been raging there for years, a war that set the stage for everything that followed. This was the war between the Northern Alliance and the Taliban, a conflict that shaped the country's destiny long before American troops ever set foot on its soil. To understand how America's longest war began, you have to travel back to the late 1990s, when Afghanistan was already divided. On one side stood the Taliban, a hardline Islamist movement that had taken control of most of the country by 1996. On the other side, in the rugged mountains of the north, a coalition of warlords, ethnic groups, and former Mujahideen fighters called themselves the United Islamic Front for the Salvation of Afghanistan, better known as the Northern Alliance. The Taliban's rise came swiftly. After years of civil war that followed the Soviet withdrawal, the country was exhausted. Chaos, corruption, and infighting had torn Afghanistan apart. The Taliban promised order, stability, and Islamic purity. Many Afghans, tired of warlords and lawlessness, welcomed them at first. But the Taliban's harsh rule soon revealed itself. Public executions, repression of women, destruction of culture, and the enforcement of their version of Sharia law turned Afghanistan into a theocratic prison. The Northern Alliance refused to bow, led by the legendary commander Ahmad Shah Massoud, a brilliant strategist known as the Lion of Panjshir. They held out in the northern valleys, forming a final pocket of resistance. Massoud, who had once fought the Soviets, was now the last obstacle between the Taliban and total control. By 1998, the Northern Alliance had been pushed to the brink. The Taliban controlled almost 90% of the country, including Kabul, Herat, and Kandahar, but the alliance's stronghold in the northeast, particularly in the Panjshir Valley and parts of Badakhshan, remained unconquered. With limited weapons, dwindling supplies, and only a fraction of the manpower, Massoud and his fighters fought on, not only for power, but for survival. Their struggle was not just internal. Behind the front lines, powerful foreign forces were already pulling strings. Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI, supported the Taliban with funding, training, and logistics. Saudi Arabia provided money and religious legitimacy. And behind them, Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, found a safe haven within Taliban territory. Meanwhile, the Northern Alliance was supported cautiously by Iran, Russia, and India, all wary of the Taliban's extremist ideology and Pakistan's growing influence. It was a silent, regional proxy war long before America entered the picture. Ahmad Shah Massoud was not only a soldier, he was also a visionary. In early 2001, months before 9/11, he warned the international community that a massive terrorist attack was coming. Speaking before the European Parliament, he said that if the Taliban and their foreign supporters were not stopped, terrorism would reach beyond Afghanistan's borders. His words went largely ignored. Then, on September 9, 2001, just 2 days before 9/11, Massoud was assassinated. Two Al-Qaeda operatives, posing as journalists, detonated a bomb hidden in their camera during an interview. His death was not a coincidence. It was part of Al-Qaeda's plan to remove the one Afghan leader capable of uniting the country against them before their attack on the United States. When the Twin Towers fell, the Northern Alliance was on the edge of collapse. But suddenly, the world's most powerful military turned its gaze toward Afghanistan. Within days, the United States began building alliances with Massoud's former commanders. What had been a forgotten battle in the mountains became the front line of America's war on terror. The CIA began sending small teams of agents and special forces into Northern Alliance territory. They brought money, communications, equipment, and airstrike coordination. American B-52 bombers circled overhead, dropping precision munitions guided by Alliance fighters on the ground. Together, they began to retake cities one by one. In November 2001, Kabul fell, not to American soldiers, but to the Northern Alliance. The same commanders who had fought for years without global recognition were now leading the charge in an international campaign. But beneath the celebrations, The seeds of future conflict were already being planted. The Northern Alliance was made up of many factions, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Hazaras, who had their own rivalries. The Taliban, largely Pashtun, had ruled with ethnic dominance. When the Taliban collapsed, power shifted northward. Many in the Pashtun South felt excluded from the new government, laying the foundation for the insurgency that would later return stronger than ever. By 2002, America's war in Afghanistan had officially begun, but the Northern Alliance's role quickly faded from the spotlight. The Western media rarely mentioned them again. The U.S. and NATO focused on counterinsurgency, nation-building, and democracy promotion, while the warlords of the Northern Alliance transitioned into politicians and power brokers in Kabul. The Taliban, however, never truly disappeared. Operating from safe havens across the border in Pakistan, they regrouped, rebuilt, and re-emerged. The same fighters that the Northern Alliance had once fought now returned, better organized, better funded, and with a cause strengthened by America's presence. The legacy of the Northern Alliance is complicated. To many Afghans, they are heroes who defended the country against tyranny. To others, they are remnants of a chaotic civil war era. But what cannot be denied is their role as the final barrier between Afghanistan and total Taliban domination before the U.S. invasion. Today, after America's withdrawal in 2021, the Taliban are once again in power. Many former Northern Alliance members have fled, while others quietly resist from exile. History, it seems, has come full circle. The battle that began before America's war never truly ended. It simply changed names and players. When historians look back at Afghanistan's modern history, they often start with 9/11s. But the truth is, the story began years earlier, in the mountain passes of Panjshir, where Ahmad Shah Massoud and his fighters stood their ground against impossible odds. They were fighting not just for territory, but for an idea, an Afghanistan free from extremism and foreign domination. The forgotten battle between the Northern Alliance and the Taliban was the prelude to the global war that followed. It was a test of endurance, loyalty, and conviction. It was also a mirror of what Afghanistan would endure for decades: shifting alliances, outside interference, and a cycle of hope and betrayal. As the world moved on, Afghanistan remained what it had always been: a land caught between empires, ideologies, and ambitions. The graveyard of empires, where victories are temporary and defeats echo for generations. And so, the story of the Northern Alliance versus the Taliban is not just a story about who won or lost. It is about why Afghanistan has never truly found peace. It's about how every foreign power that enters leaves behind broken promises, and how even before America's war, Afghans were already fighting their own. The Northern Alliance fought for survival. The Taliban fought for control. But in the end, it was the Afghan people who paid the highest price. History may have forgotten the early years of that struggle, but its consequences are still shaping our world today. Because before America's war, there was already another fought in silence, in the mountains, and in the hearts of those who refused to surrender. This is Graveyard of Empires.